Section 2 of The Wood Beyond the World. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Corey Samuel. The Wood Beyond the World by William Morris. Chapter 4. Storm befalls the Bartholomew, and she is driven off her course. Now swift sailed the Bartholomew for 4 weeks toward the northwest with a fair wind, and all was well with ship and crew. Then the wind died out on even of a day, so that the ship scarce made way at all, though she rolled in a great swell of the sea, so great that it seemed to ridge all the main athwart. Moreover, down in the west was a great bank of cloud huddled up in haze, whereas for 20 days past the sky had been clear, save for a few bright white clouds flying before the wind. Now the shipmaster, a man right cunning in his craft, looked long on sea and sky, and then turned and bade the mariners take in sail and be right heedful. And when Walter asked him what he looked for, and whereof he spake not to him thereof, he said surlily, "Why should I tell thee what any fool can see without telling, to wit that there is weather to hand?" So they abode what should befall, and Walter went to his room to sleep away the uneasy while, for the night was now fallen, and he knew no more till he was waked up by great hubbub and clamour of the shipmen, and the whipping of ropes, and thunder of flapping sails, and the tossing and weltering of the ship withal. But, being a very stout-hearted young man, he lay still in his room, partly because he was a landsman, and had no mind to tumble about amongst the shipmen and hinder them. And withal he said to himself, "What matter whether I go down to the bottom of the sea, or come back to Langton, since either way my life or my death will take away from me the fulfilment of desire? Yet soothly, if there hath been a shift of wind, that is not so ill, for then shall we be driven to other lands, and so at the least our homecoming shall be delayed, and other tidings may hap amidst of our tarrying. So let all be as it will." So in a little while, in spite of the ship's wallowing and the tumult of the wind and waves, he fell asleep again, and woke no more till it was full daylight, and there was the shipmaster standing in the door of his room, the sea water all streaming from his wet weather raiment. He said to Walter, "Young master, the seal of the day to thee, for by good hap we have gotten into another day. Now I shall tell thee that we have striven to beat, so as not to be driven off our course, but all would not avail. Wherefore for these 3 hours we have been running before the wind. But, fair sir, so big hath been the sea, that but for our ship being of the stoutest, and our men all yare, we had all grown exceedingly wise concerning the ground of the mid-main. Praise be to St. Nicholas and All Hallows! For though ye shall presently look upon a new sea, and maybe a new land to boot, yet is that better than looking on the ugly things down below." "Is all well with ship and crew then?" said Walter. "Yea, forsooth," said the shipmaster, "verily the Bartholomew is the darling of Oakwoods. Come up and look at it, how she is dealing with wind and waves, all free from fear." So Walter did on his foul weather raiment, and went up on to the quarter deck, and there indeed was a change of days, for the sea was dark and tumbling mountain high, and the white horses were running down the valleys thereof, and the clouds drave low over all, and bore a scud of rain along with them, and though there was but a rag of sail on her, the ship flew before the wind, rolling a great wash of water from bulwark to bulwark. Walter stood looking on it all a while, holding on by a stay rope, and saying to himself that it was well that they were driving so fast toward new things. Then the shipmaster came up to him, and clapped him on the shoulder, and said, "Well, shipmate, cheer up, and now come below again, and eat some meat, and drink a cup with me." So Walter went down, and ate and drank, and his heart was lighter than it had been since he had heard of his father's death, and the feud awaiting him at home, which forsooth he had deemed would stay his wanderings a weary while, and therewithal his hopes. But now it seemed as if he needs must wander, would he not? And so it was that even this fed his hope, so sore his heart clung to that desire of his to seek home to those three that seemed to call him unto them. CHAPTER V. Now they come to a new land. 3 days they drave before the wind, and on the 4th the clouds lifted, the sun shone out, and the offing was clear. The wind had much abated, though it still blew a breeze, and was a head wind for sailing toward the country of Langton. So then the master said that, since they were bewildered, and the wind so ill to deal with, it were best to go still before the wind, that they might make some land, and get knowledge of their whereabouts from the folk thereof. Withal he said that he deemed the land not to be very far distant. So did they, and sailed on pleasantly enough, for the weather kept on mending, and the wind fell till it was but a light breeze, yet still foul for Langton. So wore 3 days, and on the eve of the 3rd the man from the topmast cried out that he saw land ahead. And so did they all before the sun was quite set, though it were but a cloud no bigger than a man's hand. When night fell they struck not sail, but went forth toward the land fair and softly, for it was early summer, so that the nights were neither long nor dark. But when it was broad daylight they opened a land, a long shore of rocks and mountains, and nought else that they could see at first. Nevertheless, as day wore and they grew nigher, first they saw how the mountains fell away from the sea, and were behind a long wall of sheer cliff, and coming nigher yet, they beheld a green plain, going up after a little in green bents and slopes to the feet of the said cliff wall. No city nor haven did they see there, not even when they were far nigher to the land. Nevertheless, whereas they hankered for the peace of the green earth, after all the tossing and unrest of the sea, and whereas also they doubted not to find at the least good and fresh water, and belike other bait in the plain under the mountains, they still sailed on not unmerrily, so that by nightfall they cast anchor in 5 fathom water hard by the shore. Next morning they found that they were lying a little way off the mouth of a river not right great. So they put out their boats and towed the ship up into the said river, and when they had gone up it for a mile or thereabouts, they found the sea water failed, for little was the ebb and flow of the tide on that coast. Then was the river deep and clear, running between smooth grassy land like to meadows. Also on their left board they saw presently 3 head of neat cattle going, as if in a meadow of a homestead in their own land, and a few sheep, and thereafter, about a bow draught from the river, they saw a little house of wood and straw thatch under a wooded mound, and with orchard trees about it. They wondered little thereat, for they knew no cause why that land should not be builded, though it were in the far outlands. However, they drew their ship up to the bank, thinking that they would at least abide a while, and ask tidings, and have some refreshing of the green plain, which was so lovely and pleasant. But while they were busied herein, they saw a man come out of the house, and down to the river to meet them, and they soon saw that he was tall and old, long hoary of hair and beard, and clad mostly in the skins of beasts. He drew nigh without any fear or mistrust, and coming close to them gave them the sele of the day in a kindly and pleasant voice. The shipmaster greeted him in his turn, and said withal, "Old man, art thou the king of this country?" The elder laughed. "It hath had none other a long while," said he, "and at least there is no other son of Adam here to gainsay." "Thou art alone here then?" said the master. "Yea," said the old man, "save for the beasts of the field and the wood, and the creeping things and fowl. Wherefore it is sweet to me to hear your voices." Said the master, "Where be the other houses of the town?" The old man laughed. Said he, "When I said that I was alone, I meant that I was alone in the land, and not only alone in this stead. There is no house save this betwixt the sea and the dwellings of the bears, over the cliff wall yonder, yea, and a long way over it." "Yea," quoth the shipmaster grinning, "and be the bears of thy country so manlike that they dwell in builded houses?" The old man shook his head. "Sir," said he, "as to their bodily fashion, it is altogether manlike, save that they be one and all higher and bigger than most. for they be bears only